Today on the National Security Daily Briefing, we'll be talking about 3 threats to the national security of Mexican government institutions and government agencies. In 2017, Donald Trump signed an agreement in order to prohibit the use of Kaspersky software from all USA government agencies because of espionage concerns. The case against Kaspersky is well documented and deeply concerning. This law is long overdue, said Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who led calls in Congress to scrub the software from government computers. She added that the company's software represented a grave risk to the national security of the United States of America. The Kaspersky ban, which appears in Section 1634 of the 2018 NDAA, reads as follows: no department, agency, organization, or other element of the federal government may use, whether directly or through work or on behalf of another department, agency, organization, or element of the federal government, any hardware, software, or services developed or provided in whole or in part by Kaspersky. Now you may ask yourself, what does this have to do with Mexican government agencies? Well, even though Kaspersky ban was initiated in 2018 in the United States of America, the antivirus of choice of many of the information technology officials of many Mexican government agencies continues to be Kaspersky, or as I like to call it, Kasperskynet. In 2015, WikiLeaks leaked many government internal emails from Mexican government agencies, in which it made public that these agencies had purchased hacking teams' RCS spyware software that was to be used against Mexican citizens. Mike Pompeo, former CIA director, did not warn Mexican intelligence counterparts about the possible exposure to espionage and blackmail that could result from the use of Kaspersky software installed in many state, federal, and municipal level computers of Mexico government agencies that could result in the Russian influence in political decisions in the region. Meantime, Kaspersky was banned from all USA government computers. We must ask ourselves, is there transparency in the purchase of antivirus software in government institutions in Mexico? Was there any foul play in the antivirus software election versus buying or purchasing the software from allied countries such as Microsoft? Why did Mexican government agencies decide it was more plausible to buy Russian software and not take into effect the great risk and the great threat that existed of using Russian software, or for that matter any other kind of software, that even Chinese, which might represent a threat of espionage, of being object of espionage. Now we must take into consideration what is the connection between espionage and information collected from Mexico offices, from government agencies, and WikiLeaks. As I already told you, a few years ago, WikiLeaks leaked internal emails from Mexican government that had purchased hacking team espionage software that was used against Mexican citizens by government in order to spy on them. We must take into consideration that WikiLeaks leaking of information might have been signaling from Russian agencies that they had collected information of a Mexican government. Why would you signal in Mexican government that you have collected information about them? Well, if you plan to influence the decision making of Mexican government's officials, first you might catch their attention by leaking a few information into the public. So they might know that information was collected about them, and thus making them susceptible to external influence. We saw that during the United States elections, there were filtrations of the Democratic Committee emails that resulted in the Democratic Party defeat in elections. Now we must take into consideration other kinds of threats to the national security of Mexico in concerns to espionage. This is the photocopy machines. And we must ask ourselves, are government photocopier machines a national security risk? Well, in Mexico, such as other countries maybe, government agencies rent photocopy machines from private companies. CBS Evening News featured a story about copier security. As we've been saying for years, copiers or multifunction printers are at risk for a data breach just like a laptop or desktop PC, and CBS provided this by extracting data stored in MVPS. Baja California government agencies use private contractors for the service of copiers, thus existing the security risk of those contractors being infiltrated by the photocopier repairman. Who do we rent our photocopy machines from? We must ask ourselves these questions. Who is behind the rent of photocopy machines? And are these services being used by espionage intelligence services in order to acquire information from government agencies? As CBS explained, photocopies maintain an internal memory of all the documents scanned and photocopied. Therefore, a repairman can access this information and represents a risk of leaking of information, of internal information into other intelligence services. Are photocopy suppliers vetted? Does photocopy machines repairmen meet our clearance criteria? These are questions that we must make ourselves. Do they have clearance, and are they vetted? And the answer in the case of Mexico is no. Suppliers of photocopy machines are not vetted, and they do not have any kind of clearance. And repairmen are not vetted and do not have any kind of clearance in order to provide the service. Is our government agencies compromised as a result of foreign government espionage operations in the country? Well, as for now, we have just talked about two threats that exist. One is the use of Kaspersky software, which is a Russian software, in many Mexican government computers. Another risk is the rent of photocopy machines to private suppliers or contractors, which are not vetted and which do not have clearance in order to do it. And now another risk. Cleaning services are also supplied by private contractors. In state, federal, and municipal government agencies in Mexico, there's unexpected risk for the conducting of espionage and bugging listening operations, which could be introduced into government infrastructures without the knowledge of Mexican government. The unexpected spy, the cleaning lady, might just go inside government offices and just bug them without the knowledge of Mexico agencies because they didn't take into consideration that these services could be used in order to acquire information from them. Another risk that exists, another threat with almost the same methodology, is that government computers in many Mexico government agencies are rented from private unvetted contractors. As we already told about the photocopy machines, they maintain internal memories that can be copied or can be extracted with all the information of documents scanned on them. In the same way, government computers, which information has not been erased, might make into the hands of these private unvetted contractors, thus providing valuable information in espionage. What level of vulnerability results of government officials' corruption? Well, as a result of the great corruption that exists in Mexico, the use and leaking of information can result in blackmail of government officials. Just in the last administration from Baja California, more than 39 public officials have been denounced because of fraud practices. You can only imagine if information acquired about these frauds during the time they were serving could be acquired by an intelligence services, an external intelligence services, how much influence these intelligence services might have acquired over the Mexican government. In this case, the government of Baja California. When a foreign government seeks to influence international events' outcomes, we must take into consideration that why would a foreign country acquire information from another government? Well, most likely it would do it in order to influence international events' outcomes. In the case of Baja California, we can give an example, the migrant crisis that might have resulted in the closing of the international border between Mexico and the United States. As you might recall, the migrant crisis and the caravan crisis, where thousands of migrants came into Mexican states in order to await time to move to the United States, started an international crisis between both countries, in which Mexico officials were vital in order to manage this crisis. What if a foreign country would have acquired information in order to influence the management of this crisis by Mexico officials? Thus, the example would be the Tijuana migrant crisis, which could result in the closing of Mexico-USA border. What are the tools to influence an international event and outcome? The tools that may be used by a country in order to influence an international event and an outcome can be the information that it has acquired and the influence of this country, of the officials of the country it wants to influence. Thus, we have analyzed in these slides 3 threats to the national security of Mexico government agencies. One is the continual use of Kaspersky software inside the Mexican government computers, even though it is already banned from the use in all the United States government agencies' computers. Number 2 and number 3 is the rent of services to private suppliers that may be influenced by foreign governments, of services such as computers rent for government, renting computers for government and for government employees, and the cleaning services, which may be used in order to introduce bugging devices inside government offices, Mexican government offices. Well, that's all for now, and thank you for listening.